Hello and welcome to this interaction series for our breakthrough curriculum, the 2 years ahead of us of getting this implemented in our schools. My name is James Busey and I'm your host for this session as we look today at introducing writing the SBC way. And the purpose of this session, you can see on the screen there, to provide an overview of the core components of the breakthrough curriculum for writing. And we're looking specifically at the finalized progression pathways, the assessment approaches, supports for the classroom, and the most recent support with planning for learning. I am really excited about this new updated approach to our curriculum, and I am convinced that this is going to make a significant impact to the outcomes of our children and young people. So let's get started with this session. Now, these sessions are hybrid by its very nature. The geography of the borders means that it's pretty difficult to be everywhere all at the same time. So these hybrid sessions allow for the same messages to go out to all schools, but they're hybrid in so much as you'll have an in-person facilitator who will guide you through the content of these sessions. So, for example, there will be some core input. Today it's from me. There will be some reflection questions, and your facilitator will pause the video and guide you through those questions to facilitate and get some feedback and get you thinking. And then there'll be a follow-up task, and that'll either be done as part of as an immediate follow-up or at a time led by your school facilitator. And we'll bring it all together with some checking for some new understanding as we would do in any lesson. So let's crack on and see what today holds. So before we get into the detail of writing, we need to remember that our curriculum for excellence and the idea of curriculum, which is the totality of everything that is planned for children and young people throughout their education. And you can see that those 4 contexts where we've got curriculum subjects in that blue bottom corner. That's the kind of nitty-gritty of writing and how we learn and teach writing. But we've also got the green, the orange and the pink there, of those 4 elements being everything that our children and young people experience throughout the school day. And we need to remember that writing serves across all 4 contexts. It isn't just the writing lesson. So whilst we are going to talk about the granular elements of teaching writing, actually what we're aiming for is developing children and young people who can write with confidence across all 4 contexts of the curriculum. And that is the end goal. The challenge, though, whilst that is the end goal, the actual mechanics of writing is complex. Writing is as complex as a game of chess. Now, as adults, we've reached, to some extent, an element of expertise in writing. We don't have to think about the mechanics of it very much when we're writing, to different levels of degree. But as children, as novices learning to write, there are so many considerations when we put pen to paper or start to type. So we need to recognize the complexity. So this graphic here, a great example of, whilst the finished piece, think of an iceberg, is just literally the cap of the iceberg, there are so many parts that go into creating that finished piece. And those are just some of them listed there. But we need to remember, and as teachers, we need to guide our learners through the complexity of the writing process. And we do need to start very granular. And unashamedly, by starting granular, we will reach that confidence in our writers where they can write across the curriculum. But the argument that we'll be putting forward today is if we jump too quickly to writing across and too generically, we actually miss out some of these really fundamental components. Okay, so as with all elements of the breakthrough curriculum and all elements of what we're trying to achieve across schools, there is the SBC Way Launchpad. Hopefully many of you will be familiar with it. If you're not, the QR code is there. You might just want to put it up on your phone while you're engaging with us today, because everything I'm referencing today is available on the Launchpad. It's designed to be a one-stop shop. And so whilst it might direct you to different spaces, everything starts on the Launchpad. So today, when we're talking about writing, you're looking for core business, and then from core business, you're looking for breakthrough curriculum. From breakthrough curriculum, you're into literacy, and from literacy, you're going to writing. Okay, so core business, breakthrough, literacy, writing. It should all theoretically just make sense as you click through the different components. Need to remember that for writing, our SBC Way approach, we have created and developed a methodology that is underpinning everything that we're doing. And this methodology is informed by a wealth of research. And everything about that, I'll hint in a moment. But ultimately, what we've now got is this SBC Way writing methodology and the visual that you can see. This is built on the simple view of writing, which is made up of 3 components. You've got the ideas of transcription, which considers things like spelling, handwriting, or keyboard skills, and punctuation. You've got, on the right-hand side, executive functions, which is the mental processes that we go through around preparing, planning, drafting, revising, editing, and then presenting our writing. And on the top of the triangle, you've got text generation, and that is the ideas at word level, sentence level, paragraph, and ultimately full text level. Underneath that, we've put in what we're calling the foundations or the planks. So we've got oracy there because we know that if you can't say it, you can't write it. So oracy, opportunity to talk, to digest, to share ideas is a foundation of writing. I'm just going to jump to reading because reading is where we get ideas. Reading is where we hear about new words, where we hear phrases, where we hear terminology, where we get imagination. So reading is a foundation for writing. Then we've also got the knowledge-rich curriculum. Now, we know more and more literature is saying that this isn't about facts, but this is about cultural capital. This is about experience. If you don't know about something, you can't write about it. You don't know about something, you can't talk about it. So knowledge in terms of awareness, understanding of the world around us is a foundation for successful writing. And then the last 2, you've got the idea of writing across a range of genres. We need to think about that systematically and carefully. And then finally, purpose and motivation to write. We need to give children a purpose and a motivation to write. That in itself breeds success. So that's just a brief overview of the methodology that is underpinning what's following today. A significant contribution to that is the ideas that come from the writing revolution, a lady here called Judith Hochman. And it's been pretty significant in the thinking because this puts sentences as the key to successful writing. And I'll elaborate on this shortly. But the idea of quality sentences being the building blocks for successful texts. So that is, you'll see this going through the progressions and going through the supporting guidance and the pedagogy. Sentences are rule. So everything about the methodology is available. It's on the Launchpad. There's a methodology document, and it just talks you through the different components, why it's there, what it does, and how to explore that further in the classroom. So please do, when it's appropriate, you can explore that or parts of that as and when. Okay, so just going to pause here. And I'm going to ask your facilitator in a moment just to literally pause the video. But I've got some questions for you to think about. I've just shared through the idea of the simple view of writing, which supports our methodology with the ideas of transcription, text generation, and executive function. So transcription are the ideas of spelling and punctuation and handwriting. Text generation is coming up with ideas at word level, sentence level, and text level. And then executive function is the thought process, the planning, the drafting, the editing, and then the final presentation. So please, can you ever think about which elements of those do your pupils have more success with? Which elements do your pupils find a bit more challenging? And then for you as a teacher or as an adult practitioner, which do you feel more confident teaching? Which do you feel less confident teaching? Have a think, share, think, pair, share, and then when you've brought that conversation to a close, your in-person facilitator will click play on the video. Okay, so we've got this idea that writing is complex. We know what our final outcome is, to be able to write across all elements of the curriculum, to be confident writers. We've got a methodology, but let's think about the steps to success. So our SBC Way progression that is available to download and start using now. There are 3 important ingredients, and you can see them on the screen here. So we've started with the Curriculum for Excellence experiences and outcomes and the different organizers for writing. And these are woven into our pathway. We've also got the benchmarks, which are used as an assessment point of reference. And then we've got research and evidence, the best that's now available to help us teach writing. So these 3 parts underpin the progressions. And just for your reference, when you're looking at the documents, the way they're set out is for each early, first, second level, we've got 3 phases. So depending upon the organizer or the component of writing that you're looking at, it's always split into 3 phases. So for first level, you've got a phase 1, a phase 2, a phase 3, same for second, same for early. And those are just progressive points in time. They are nominally linked to year groups, but they are phases because it could be depending upon where the learner is. And sitting under that, you've got the progressive learning statements. Now, what we've done is the 4th column is the benchmark, not the 3rd column. And there's a reason for that. The benchmarks were designed as an assessment reference tool, not a planning tool. Now, the reason we've done this is because actually what we're doing is that we are planning that if our students follow this progression and get to phase 3, you will be confident that they've achieved the benchmark. So the benchmarks are almost kind of happening as you go through the phases. The benchmarks are there as a point of reference at the end of the level or when it's appropriate. Okay, but if we design a curriculum that confidently teaches our children and young people the best ways to write, then we are going to absolutely make sure that they achieve the benchmarks when appropriate. So that's just how it's set up and how it's structured as a document and as a progression. So just when we're looking at it in more detail, writing, we've using the support and the guidance from Education Scotland, we've taken literacy and split it into an element, we're calling it a story of 3 parts. So literacy is achieved by firstly building a culture, then developing the skills and the knowledge so that you're creating independent and engaged learners, and for us, writing. So I just wanted to talk through how that looks. So you've got these 3 parts. So on the progression document, so here's an example. Here's early level. Okay, now this is our new look early level progression. This is specifically designed to be P1 friendly. Now, this is off the back of some really helpful feedback over the past year. The amazing early years team already had a tracker and a document in place that was used in our early learning centres and nurseries. But it wasn't completely friendly for our P1 teachers. So the early years team and the curriculum team have developed an early level version of the existing early level document. So the statements are the same, but the format is new. So the format now aligns with first and second progression statements and documents. And what you can see, as I was saying, you've got the E's and O's in there, you've got the organisers down the side, here's the phases, and here's the benchmarks. And you've got the statements of progression, the statements of I can. What do we need our learners to be able to do? And here's an example of what that would look like for this part of early level. At first level, here you go, same again. This is for developing the skills for writing, that second part of the story of 3 parts. The progression includes these icons here, which makes a direct link to the methodology. So this is about text generation, whereas this is about transcription. This is punctuation, transcription. This is a sentence level, so this is about text generation. And if we were to look at an example of second level, this is about the third part of the story, which is creating independent writers. And so we've thought about the process here, and I'll come onto this in a moment, but we need to really make sure that the full process is modeled and experienced by our learners. Often we will get to drafting and revising. How often do we give meaningful time to edit? How often do we actually then present writing for a purpose? And often, so we need to think through that full process. So you've got the early, first and second level documents. Now, within those, there are then progression of concepts. So I just wanted to briefly go over what those are, because when we're thinking about writing, we need to think about writing at word level, at sentence level, and then at text level. Okay, so there's a progression of what that looks like built into the broader progressions. So if we're thinking about words, then obviously words starts with your smallest written form, which is a grapheme, which is linked to the smallest unit of sound, which is a phoneme. So learning to write, you need to learn the smallest units of written form, which is a grapheme linked to phonemes. So obviously, learning to write starts with your phonics. And there is a progression built, a program that sits underneath our writing progression that will guide you through those smallest units of writing. That then builds onto a spelling progression, so that yes, you're learning those individual sounds, those individual graphemes, but actually what we want to do is to be able to build words and write single individual words. So we've got an SPC Way spelling recommended spelling progression, and I should say here, and I meant to say at the start, what we're saying here is this is what our SPC Way is, and what you're doing may well be exactly or very, very closely aligned. So brilliant. What we're looking at is this time of migration. If you're not doing something, you need to be migrating towards it. If you are doing something, just fine tune and make sure that it's working. So this spelling progression is a recommendation if you've not got something in place. When we go from units of sound, from graphemes to building individual words. And the way that that progression builds, you go from early level, just those individual units of sound, and then you go into what's called the basic code of expanding through your knowledge of those 44 units of sound. And then you go on to explore the complex code, where you've got variations of how those individual sounds are written. So yes, you've got one sound, but you've got multiple versions of how they're written. So you need to learn how to spell all of those, or sorry, how to write those graphemes to build words. And then as you go through from first level into second level, the complex code continues, but actually now we're starting to explore morphology. And morphology is the idea of how words are built. So then you're bringing in prefixes and suffixes and root words that come from Latin and Greek. But actually, if we know about those, if we know where one particular root comes from, like psych, S-Y-C, and we know that that's something to do with a cycle or a circle, then we can use it and start to spell words because we understand where those roots come from. So that's built in to the progression as well as a supporting program. Now we come on to sentence progression. And this, for me, I believe that our writing progression is unique in Scotland because of the importance we're placing on the building blocks of writing being sentences. I don't think there is anything else in Scotland where we put as much emphasis on this, and we're unashamedly putting the emphasis on this because it is foundational. Building blocks of a text of writing is a quality sentence. So our progression has these multiple components to it. So you've got to think about the structure of a sentence, the types of sentence, openers, transitions going from one sentence to another, expanding a sentence, elaborating a sentence, and they're two slightly different things, combining sentences, and the idea of run-on sentences. How many of us have read children's writing when it goes and then, and then, and then, and then? How do we stop that? So we need to think about how we introduce the skills right from the early writing process. So there's a progression of sentence building built into the overarching progression. And that's exciting. And wrapped into that and woven into that is the idea of punctuation. Because if you're starting to write sentences, you need to think about which punctuation supports that type of sentence. So if you're doing a sentence that is an instruction as opposed to a sentence which is a statement, then you need to think about, or a question, you need to think about the punctuation that goes with it. Likewise, if you're going to try and expand, you might want to be including a comma because you're going to be adding some new information within it. So punctuation supports sentences. Then we move on to text level. So we've got the idea of if we can build good sentences, we can then start to put sentences together to make a paragraph. But let's build one paragraph first. Let's learn how to make one really good paragraph. And then we can move on to do multiple paragraphs, which then create text. If we jump too quickly from, oh, good, it looks like they can write a sentence, to right, let's write lots. Of course, that's where we want to go to. We want to get to that. And that happens, and that can continue to happen. But the focus on teaching is build a sentence, build a paragraph, build multiple paragraphs, build a text. In terms of building those texts, we talked about genre, and this is built into the progression as well. So we've identified and concluded that there are three buckets of genre. You've got narrative genre, informative genre, and discursive genre. Okay, and so ultimately what we need to be doing is ensuring that our children learn and young people learn about these three types of text, but they don't need to have written every single one of them. What we've suggested is, and you can see EFS, is that they are introduced and developed over each level, early level, first level, second level. So some of them are just relevant to second level, some of them are more just pertinent to first level. And again, that's built into the progression. What we're saying is make sure that you do cover the three genre types, but it's not about ensuring that they've covered every single genre. The focus is on the sentence. The genre is a context to develop those really great skills. And ultimately, what we want at that text level is that the process becomes something. We're supporting the metacognition here, the executive function, where we make sure that we're guiding through the process. And that might take the course of a week, where we're building up the text. We're preparing. We've got some really great learning that's gone in around our topic or our IDL context. We're starting to plan some ideas. We're using the outline tools that are available and as part of the guidance. Drafting it, we're getting some feedback, we're editing it, and then finally we've got a purpose for it. We're presenting it for a purpose. Maybe we're putting together a class book, maybe we're going to present it on a blog, maybe we're just using Shobi, maybe we're going to share it with the class next door. But the more reasons we can give to present text, the more purposeful and meaningful that becomes. Okay. A lot thrown at you there in terms of the progression and what is providing our writing curriculum. I said at the start, I'm very excited about it. I genuinely think this is going to really support our children and young people's progress. So I'm going to ask you to take a moment to stop and think. Some questions here for you, and your facilitator will pause and you can talk, you can think, you can share. And then, so first question is, in terms of word level, does your approach to spelling and teaching of spelling include the complex phonics code, not just the basic 44, but the complex phonics code? And have you started to think about morphology, introducing those root words? At sentence level, how much time do you currently devote to explicit teaching of sentences, the building blocks of writing? And at text level, do you scaffold pupils' paragraph writing? Have you taught them how to purposefully build a quality paragraph? And do pupils write narratives, informative text, and discursive text as those broad three categories? Pause the video, have a discussion, and when you're ready, click play again. Okay. So we're on to the second part, third part now of this session, which is talking about assessment of writing. So when we're thinking about assessment of writing, what we're looking to do, we're taking an asset-based approach, which is let's look at what children can do rather than what children can't do. But there are two sides of the coin to that, because we do need to know what they can't do so that we can get it better and help them move on. That's the ultimate purpose of a teacher, isn't it? Find out what a child doesn't know and teach them it. But in terms of assessment, we want to be asset-based, looking for where success is. And Education Scotland advised that in terms of writing, children and young people write for two purposes: broadly creative texts and broadly discursive texts. So broadly creative, broadly discursive. And we're assessing across that, thinking about tools for writing, thinking about that wider context. And what we developed is a suite of tools to support that process. Ultimately, the tools that we've developed are there to support teacher professional judgment. It's a great opportunity that we have in Scotland, whereby our professionalism is valued so highly that what we say is reported to government. And that's a real honour. But with that comes a real responsibility. With great power comes great responsibility, just comes to mind. So what we've developed is a suite of assessment tools that will help you feel confident about your judgment. And those assessment tools help you think through word level and sentence level, text level assessment. So if we look at word level, just an example, we've got some phonics assessments which are available. You've probably already got many of these, but these are available to you if you don't have them or you want to look and see what they're like. Looking at how those individual graphemes linked to the phonemes, so the ability to write the grapheme and then to be able to use those to build some words as we're starting to build up that starting word building skill set. Then we've got sentence level assessments, and this is, I think, really key. So here's an example, just a snapshot here of first level and second level. The things that we are looking for, linked to the progression, that we're looking for our learners to be able to do. And if they can't do them, that's on us. Okay, our job is to teach them to do these things. So we're proposing that you do these at the start of the school year and work out where the gaps are and then teach accordingly. And then you keep going, come back to them and just kind of build up that repertoire and confidence in what children can do in their sentence level writing. And that also, when you get onto second level particularly, you've got some paragraph level questions there as well to look at how they're building those individual paragraphs and then how they're building multiple paragraphs. Then when you come onto text level, we are still just coming together the final bits of this, which is the genre support tools. So to assess a child's ability to, for example, here, write an information report. Here are the things that we're looking for, the success criteria at different phases. Okay, so here, this is first level, and if we were looking at first level phase 3, which is theoretically you're kind of getting into primary 4, these are the things we'd be looking for in an information report. We've got some examples here of the types of vocabulary they'd be using, the punctuation they'd be using, and then you're looking here, if we were to go on, just an example of what that might look like in the content of it. So by building these reference materials and these examples, we've got something that as teachers we can refer back to and say, right, this is what it should look like. This is what I'm looking for together, that shared, common, aligned assessment tool. Just a note here to add in that for primary 4s, primary 7s and S3s, once final conversations have taken place, we are going to be using comparative judgment going forward. A number of schools use this as a trial over the past couple of years. We are going to be using that across SBC. There's currently conversations at Scottish Government level about the rollout of this across Scotland. So we are absolutely at the front of this. It is a very powerful tool for just building confidence in your judgments. So watch this space, primary 4, primary 7 and S3. However, it is for all teachers to be part of the process, because there is rich learning in this. So I wanted to say that at the start here. This isn't just for P4 teachers and P7 teachers. This is for all teachers. So whilst it'll be primary 4 writing that's assessed and primary 7 writing that is assessed, it'll be all teachers which are part of that process. Okay, because there's really rich learning for all of us in that. Okay, finally on assessment, an assessment calendar. So what we are proposing then is to build up this picture of how are our learners doing, what are they doing well at, and then what are some of the gaps I need to plug. We're going to start the year and we're saying by the end of the first half term, we're having done a word level assessment, whether that's phonics or single word spelling test, whatever you're currently using. And if you want to use what's available because you don't have something that's there. Completing a sentence checklist And then thinking about your kind of baseline text, just doing a piece of code, writing at the start and just working out how they're doing at a text level. And then over the year, you're coming back to that. So we're doing word level phonics checking and sentence level every half term, just checking in. How are they doing? How are they doing? Build that picture. By the end of each term, though, then you're doing a full text as well. And then when you come to the end of Easter, as we're starting to think about the end of the school year, you've got snazzers. We've put snazzers in by the end of Easter for writing. And then you've got comparative judgment, which will involve all teachers, but only P4 and P7 writers or S3 writers. But you can see here how we're just trying to build up by this agreed and purposeful calendar, building up our bank of information and evidence. Information's better about our children's learning. Okay, time to pause and think. Are you systematically monitoring pupil progress in phonics and or spelling, sentence construction and use, text generation? And how are you using all of the information that you do have to reach a judgment about pupils' progress in writing over time? Okay, so conversation, think, pair, share, feedback, and your in-school facilitator will pause and then play again when it's appropriate. Okay, very nearly at the end of this session today, this interaction series, giving you the overview of writing. Wanted to kind of finish up with some supports for what it can be and what it will look like in the classroom. First thing to bring your attention to is a really comprehensive guidance document, which really just sets out what to do and how to teach, particularly at sentence level, the different components which are set out in the progression. Because we believe that it's that sentence level bit which is going to make the biggest difference, but it's also the bit that this is not done as well as it could be. So a really great document there. It's all hyperlinked, so when you open it, you look at the contents page, and if you click on sentence openers, it'll take you straight to the sentence openers section of the document. Okay, so that's available on the Padlet. Everything we've referenced today is available on the SPC Way Launchpad and on the Writing Padlet. So please do explore that and take a moment to just kind of get your head around that for different bits that you're teaching. There are also a number of kind of helpful classroom tools, whether they be you put them on the iPads and pupils can access them. So for example, at first level, we're thinking about punctuation. Then at phase 1, we're talking about capital letters and full stops. But as a teacher, you're going to start introducing the idea. So with supporters, with teacher support, thinking about question marks, exclamation marks, and comma. Why not? Because we're reading about it. Phase 2, this is what children should be able to do. Phase 3, this is what children should be doing. And then you're introducing these ideas along the side. So that could be on your wall. That could be on the iPads. They are there to support the thinking around punctuation, for example. Then when it comes to writing a text, these are the ingredients for writing a report. Again, put it on Shobi, share it on the iPad. You could have it on your wall. It could be that you put it up on the screen. But these are tools that are built to support you as you're teaching the components of a genre. And here are the extra bits here. So this is the kind of the second page there. So for punctuation that we're looking for within a report, coordinating conjunction we'd be looking for within a report, and other elements that we'd be looking for within a report. A useful scaffolding tool for pupils. We're not trying to trick them out here. Let's give them the support to be successful. There's a load more of supports available on the Launchpad, but those are just some examples. I'm going to finish up here with some support around planning. Now, I know that planning can be a contentious conversation, a contentious issue. What I want to say here is that the guidance document I'm just going to talk you through here is fundamentally guidance and support to support thinking. As teachers, we must and we have a responsibility to plan quality learning. Now, plan doesn't mean filling out a document. Plan does mean think deeply about the learning of our children and young people. And nobody can argue that that is not our job. What we've put together here is some guidance, some prompt questions. There are some blank proformas. that might be helpful, but their only purpose is to prompt thinking about quality learning. So for literacy, now I know we're talking about writing, but writing is part of literacy. So we have a literacy and English planning support, but there is a writing component to it, and I'll talk you through that. But as you're listening to this, please remember, this is about planning for learning, thinking about the planning for learning. This is not about paperwork. So if you decide to look at this, if you think this would be helpful to support your planning, the guidance part of the document is pretty brief, but it's basically saying for writing, and this is just a screenshot here for the writing bit, and this is the reading and listening and talking, just fits together as literacy. But it's asking you to think about the story of three parts. So planning, how are you going to plan for building a writing culture? How are you going to plan for developing the skills? How are you going to plan for building independent and engaged writers? And each of these statements just makes you think. They're prompts to help you think about what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. And then there's often examples on the side. As I said, there are blank performers there to help you. They might be helpful, they might not. It's for you to decide as a school whether these are helpful. It's about mapping out the year, which are ultimately, again, thinking deeply, how are we going to make sure that our learners do learn everything we need them to learn over the year? We cannot just plan today without knowing what tomorrow holds or what next week holds, or ultimately what the end goal requires. We need to start with the end goal and work backwards. And we've got the end goal really clear. And that's what the progression documents provide for us. That's what the E's and O's provide for us. That's what the benchmarks provide for us. Let's map it out. And what we're proposing is, when you're thinking about literacy, so there are these top three parts which are literacy holistic components around genre that you'd be exploring across reading and listening and talking. You've got talk types that you'd be exploring, which links to our listening and talking progression, but they should be across all elements, or ideally of all elements of the school day, where you're exploring those talk types. And shared text links to reading, but the importance of actually using reading as a vehicle for all literacy. Then explicitly thinking about, whilst we've got everything set out in the steps of success, so there's no need to copy and paste here, but it might just be an A memoir of thinking, right, I really need to focus on, for within the word level, we're going to really look at the basic code, and then we're going to do these sounds. If I'm looking at kind of the beginning of first level, or if I'm looking at second level, I really want to do an introduction to some Greek words here. So I'm going to do that in unit 1, etc. At sentence level, right, I'm really going to focus in on sentence expansion because that's the need in block 1. Or it might be, I really need to focus in on run-ons. I need to make sure that I'm mapping out the content. Same with paragraph level. How am I going to build from single paragraphs up to multiple paragraphs, etc. So those are just encouraging you to think about how you're going to map out your writing year, your literacy year. But it's about the quality of thinking that you're doing, ideally with colleagues, not on your own. But appreciate that can be a challenge. So if you are on your own, think about the networks you have available. The cluster is a brilliant opportunity to work collaboratively. Now, very excitingly, and this is very much a kind of a work in progress, there is an amazing new artificial intelligence AI planning tool, which Inspire team have been building, working away on. At the moment, this is set up for writing because we've been using it for writing as a bit of an experiment, and it's very clever, very, very clever. So it is built using the progressions, using the guidance document, using all the methodology that we are proposing for the SBC way. You can put in a prompt question. So you can see here, as an example, I need a lesson plan about sentence openers for my P5 class. Our ideal focus is the Romans. Click. And then it comes up and says, right, here's your sample lesson plan, sentence openers in the Romans, learning intentions. And if I was scrolling down, it would then give you a full lesson. And the lesson is built on our structure for lessons, which is about having really clear learning intentions, really clear success criteria. It's about quality teacher input. It's about using lots of discussion and dialogue. It's then about giving pupils an opportunity to practice that new skill through guided practice and then bring it all together in a plenary. So really, really exciting development there. And please do have a look and play with that and see how that helps you to take all the documentation, all the guidance and the ideas and turn it into something very practical for you to teach tomorrow. Okay, so final question time. What in the classroom supports has caught your attention and would you want to investigate first? And how might the planning guidance support your thinking about planned learning? Pause the video, have a discussion, and when you're ready, click play again. Right, let's bring this session to a close. You've been brilliant. You've listened, you've engaged, you've thought. Thank you. Follow-up activities. What do you do now? Okay, so across the top there, first thing you need to do is download the progression documents. You can start using them tomorrow. So use them, explore them, and pick out the statements that are going to be appropriate for you to support planning. Explore the Launchpad, look at the in the classroom supports, and particularly look at the writing guidance document, which is really, really powerful for all the components around sentence development. And then look at the planning. So think about, you've got a plan anyway, perhaps the planning guidance will be useful. And I would encourage you to try the AI planning tool. I think that's we need to learn from that. And the more we use it, the more it learns, the better it gets. But what I want to say as a finishing is follow-up activity. What single thing could you do tomorrow in your classroom that will make a fundamental difference to writing? And it is about sentences. Put your focus on writing quality sentences, on children learning to write quality sentences, and the rest will follow. It is even arguably more important than spelling individual words, because the spelling of individual words comes through as we read more, as we talk more, and actually as we write more, we get better at spelling. If we cannot write quality sentences, we cannot write quality texts. And that is what is holding back our children and young people at the moment. So sentences rule. Think very deeply about that. So those are your follow-up tasks as and when your in-person facilitator directs you to those. And we come to the end. So what's today been about? It's about getting an overview of the core components of the Breakthrough Curriculum for Writing. We've talked through the progression, and there's the documents which go E's and O's benchmarks and all the best latest thinking. You've got phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, all the different organizers, and that's the document. But within that has then got sub-progressions in it. So you've got the progression of how you develop word level writing, how you develop sentence level writing, how you develop text level writing. So it's multifaceted. As we said right at the start, writing is as complex as a game of chess. And our job as teachers, as adults, is to make that complexity as simple as we can. We break things down. What are you going to do next? So other than the follow-up tasks, well, there will be there's the writing engagement series where each part of the curriculum, we're going to dive into more detail. So they're going to dive deeply into sentences, dive deeply into words, dive deeply into texts. And the more we can do that, the better our knowledge comes. Ultimately, as teachers, we need to be the best that we can be so that our students can be the best we can be. If you've got questions or requests, then please do contact the clpl@scottborders.gov.uk team, and either around the engagement series or any other particular requests for support. We will do our absolute best to answer those requests and do what we can. Before you go, before you turn off, any feedback on this session would be really, really helpful. We need to make these best hybrid sessions as good as we can. Just like as a teacher, we need to improve our practice as teachers. As professional learning providers, we need to get better at doing that. So there's a QR code there. If you can look out for the session writing, an overview, is basically you're asked to do a quick kind of score, how helpful you found the session, and then feedback on things that you thought went well about the approach and things that would make the approach better. Appreciate this is not perfect, because the best thing would be having people in your building with you. But in the absence and the limited ability to do that, how can we make this hybrid version best? All right, thanks all. Exciting times ahead. Go away, look at the progressions, think about sentences, improve our knowledge and understanding of teaching sentences, and the rest will truly, truly follow. Thank you all so much. Take care. Bye-bye.